The crystalline object sat in the center of the laboratory, glowing faintly under the bright lights. Dr. Yuna Kang stared at it through the protective glass, her reflection ghosting across the surface. 6 months. 6 months of failure, and today the Galactic Council would officially declare the memory drive dead. She pressed her hand against the glass. The drive was beautiful in a haunting way. It looked like frozen starlight, geometric patterns flowing through its transparent core. The Velkari had created it 50,000 years ago, long before humans learned to make fire. They had filled it with knowledge, with history, with the stories of hundreds of civilizations. And now nobody could read it. You should go home, Dr. Kang. Daewon Park stood in the doorway, his arms crossed. The young technician looked as tired as she felt. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He had spent as many sleepless nights as she had, trying to crack the drive's secrets. Just a few more minutes, Yuna said. Daewon walked closer. The council already made their decision. Tomorrow they seal it away. Put it in some museum where people can look at it and wonder what it contained. All that knowledge lost forever. We're so close. I know we are. We're not close. We're nowhere. Daewon's voice was gentle but firm. The best AI systems in the galaxy tried to access it. The Threnari brought their quantum computers. The Zelthari used their bioneural networks. Nothing worked. It's over. Yuna turned to face him. Humans haven't really tried yet. Yes, we have. You've been trying for 6 months. I've been using their methods, their technology, their way of thinking. She looked back at the drive. What if that's the problem? What if the Velkari didn't think like them? Daewon sighed. He had heard this theory before. Yuna believed that humanity's approach to problems was fundamentally different from other species. More emotional, more intuitive, less logical. She thought it was a strength, not a weakness. Most of the galaxy disagreed. The council meeting starts in an hour, Daewon said. Commander Lim wants you there. Yuna nodded slowly. She took one last look at the drive, then followed Daewon out of the lab. Research Station Meridian 7 floated in orbit around a dead world. Through the windows of the corridor, Yuna could see the planet below. It had once been home to the Velkari. Now it was just dust and ruins. Whatever had killed them left no survivors, no records, no explanation. Only their memory drives remained, scattered across their old territory like seeds that never grew. The conference room was already full when Yuna arrived. Commander Hyunwoo Lim sat at the head of the table, his military posture perfect even after years away from active service. Around him sat representatives from a dozen species, all members of the Galactic Council's Archaeological Division. The Threnari observer, Velthern, spoke first. His translated voice was cool and precise. We have exhausted all reasonable approaches. The Velkari drive uses technology beyond our current understanding. The data architecture is incompatible with any known system. Without the proper access codes or decryption keys, the information is permanently inaccessible. Permanently is a strong word, Yuna said quietly. Velthern's large eyes fixed on her. The Threnari were tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. They were known across the galaxy for their logical minds and advanced computing abilities. Dr. Kang, I respect your dedication. However, 6 months of continuous testing has yielded no results. We must accept reality. The Velkari left these drives on purpose, Yuna said. They wanted someone to find them, to read them. Why create an unbreakable lock? Perhaps they intended only their own species to access them, another council member suggested. And when the Velkari went extinct, the knowledge died with them. Commander Lim spoke up. What does Dr. Kang propose? Another 6 months of testing? No. Yuna pulled out her datapad. I propose we stop treating this like a technology problem and start treating it like a translation problem. We've been trying to hack the drive, force it open, break through its security. What if there is no security? What if we just don't understand the language? We have the galaxy's best translation systems, Velthern said. If there was a language component, we would have found it. Not all languages use words. Yuna brought up her research on the main screen. The Velkari were called the record keepers. They documented everything. But look at what we know about their culture. They valued memory above all else. Personal memory. Emotional memory. They believed that every experience, no matter how small, was worth preserving. She showed them images from Velkari ruins, art that depicted ordinary moments, Families eating together, children playing, old people sitting in gardens. They didn't just record facts and data. They recorded feelings, moments, the texture of life. And your point? Velthern asked. My point is that maybe their storage system works the same way. Maybe it's not organized by logic or mathematics. Maybe it's organized by emotion, by memory itself. The room was silent for a moment. Then one of the other scientists laughed. You're suggesting the drive responds to feelings? That's absurd, is it? Yuna looked around the table. Every species here has different biology, different brains, different ways of processing information. The Threnari think in quantum calculations. The Zelthari use parallel consciousness. Humans think in stories and memories. What if the Velkari were like us? Commander Lim leaned forward. Can you test this theory? I think I already did, Yuna said quietly. Last night, I was alone in the lab, tired, frustrated. I started talking to the drive. Just talking like it was a person. I told it about my grandmother. Dr. Kang, Velthern began, but she held up her hand. My grandmother survived the solar wars. She spent 2 years on a refugee ship running from the fighting. She lost everything. Her home, her family, most of her memories. But she held on to one thing: stories, poetry. She memorized every poem, every song, every story she could remember, and when I was young, she taught them to me. Yuna's voice grew softer. Last night I told the drive about her. I mentioned a specific date, August 15, 2089. The day she first told me about old Earth, about the world that existed before the wars. And when I said that date, the drive responded. For just a second it glowed brighter. It recognized something. The room erupted in questions. Velthern raised his voice above the others. A coincidence. Random energy fluctuation. I checked the sensors, Day One said. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood by the wall, arms still crossed. I pulled the data from last night. There was a spike in the drive's energy output exactly when Dr. Kang said that date. It lasted 3 seconds. Nothing random about it. Commander Lim studied Yuna carefully. You think you can activate the drive using human memories? I think it's worth trying, sir. The Council has already made their decision, Velthern said. This drive will be sealed and preserved. Then unseal it for 1 more day, Yuna said. Give me 24 hours. If I'm wrong, you can lock it away forever. But if I'm right, we're talking about 50,000 years of accumulated knowledge, the history of hundreds of civilizations, the recorded wisdom of the galaxy's greatest archivists. Isn't that worth 1 more day? The representatives talked among themselves in their various languages. Finally, Commander Lim stood. 24 hours, Dr. Kang. But I'm keeping observers in the lab with you. If this doesn't work, we let it go. Understood? Understood, sir. As the meeting ended and people filed out, Velthern approached Yuna. I hope you succeed, Doctor. Truly. But do not mistake sentiment for science. The universe does not bend to our emotions, no matter how deeply we feel them. Yuna met his gaze. Maybe not. But memory is real. Pain is real. Love is real. They shape us as much as gravity or physics. The Velkari understood that. Maybe it's time we did too. She left the conference room and headed straight for the lab. 24 hours. She had 24 hours to prove that humanity's greatest weakness was actually its greatest strength. That the ability to remember, to feel, to carry the past like a weight in the chest meant something. The crystalline drive waited in its chamber. Yuna stood before it and took a deep breath. Let's try this again, she whispered. And deep inside the alien crystal, something ancient stirred in response. The laboratory felt different at night, quieter, more intimate. Yuna sat alone in front of the protective chamber, her chair pulled as close as safety protocols allowed. The crystalline drive glowed softly in the darkness, its internal patterns shifting like slow thoughts. Day One had gone to get coffee an hour ago. Commander Lim checked in twice before returning to his quarters. Even the Threnari observers eventually left, convinced nothing would happen. Now it was just Yuna and the drive, existing in the same space but separated by 50,000 years of silence. She had tried everything the galaxy's experts suggested. Quantum frequency matching, neural pattern recognition, gravitational field manipulation. Every test came back the same. The drive registered as active but locked. Present but unreachable. Yuna pulled up her grandmother's photo on her data pad. The old woman's face smiled out at her, wrinkled and warm. She had died 10 years ago, but Una still heard her voice sometimes, still remembered the way she smelled like jasmine tea and old books. August 15th, 2089, Una said aloud, looking at the drive. That was the date. The day she told me about Earth. The drive flickered. Just for a moment, but Una saw it clearly. The geometric patterns inside shifted, moving faster as if responding to her voice. Her heart beat faster. You heard that, didn't you? She stood up and moved closer to the glass. The Valkyrie left you here for a reason. You're not meant to stay silent forever. Someone is supposed to find you. Someone is supposed to understand. The drive's glow intensified slightly. Una held her breath. My grandmother used to say that memory is what makes us alive. Not our bodies, not our brains, but the stories we carry. She said that when we remember someone, when we tell their stories, they live again. Una's voice cracked slightly. She made me promise to remember, to pass the stories forward. So here I am, remembering. The patterns inside the drive began to move in new configurations. Colors appeared that hadn't been there before. Soft blues and greens like distant oceans. Una's hands trembled as she pulled out her scanner. That's it, she whispered. You understand memory. You understand stories. That's your language, isn't it? The door slid open behind her. Daewon entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, then stopped. What's happening? It's responding, Una said, not taking her eyes off the drive. Get Commander Lim, get everyone. It's actually responding. Within minutes, the lab filled with people, scientists, observers, even Velthern arrived, his silver face unreadable. Commander Lim stood beside Una, watching the drive's changing patterns. What did you do? He asked. I talked about my grandmother, about memory, about a specific date that mattered to me. Una turned to Velthern. You said the universe doesn't bend to emotions. But this drive does. It's designed to. Velthern studied the readings carefully. The energy signature has changed. The internal structure is reorganizing itself. I've never seen anything like this. Because you've never tried talking to it like it was alive, Una said. She turned back to the drive. The Valkyrie were the record keepers. They valued every memory, every story. What if their technology works the same way? What if you have to give it a memory to access a memory? That's not how data storage works, one of the scientists said. It's not how our data storage works, Daewon corrected. But maybe it's how theirs did. Una placed her hand on the glass. I'm going to try something. Everyone stay back. She closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother. Really thought about her. Not just the visual memory, but everything. The sound of her voice singing old songs. The way her hands shook when she poured tea. The stories she told about Earth before the wars, when cities still stood and oceans still flowed. The pain in her eyes when she talked about everyone she lost. October 3rd, 2298, Una said clearly. That's the date my grandmother died. I was holding her hand. She looked at me and said, remember me. Remember all of us. Don't let us disappear. The drive exploded with light. Not physically, but internally. The patterns moved faster, colors bleeding into each other. And then, for the first time in 50,000 years, it projected. Holographic images filled the lab. Alien figures, Valkyrie, tall and graceful with elongated features and eyes that seemed too large for their faces. They moved through scenes of daily life, walking through streets, holding each other, raising children. Growing old, everyone in the lab stared in shock. The images were so clear, so real, they might have been recorded yesterday instead of millennia ago. It's working, someone whispered. The images shifted. Now they showed a Valkyrie family sitting together, sharing a meal. No sound, but Una could feel the emotion radiating from the scene. Love, warmth, the simple joy of being together. Then the images faded. The drive's glow dimmed back to its usual level. What happened? Commander Lim asked. Why did it stop? Una understood. Because I only gave it one memory, one moment. It gave me back one moment in return. That's how it works. It's not a database. It's an exchange. Velthern's voice was different now, quieter, almost uncertain. You're saying this device requires emotional input to function? Not just emotional input. Real memories. Personal ones. Specific moments in time that actually mattered to someone. Una looked around the room. The Valkyrie didn't just record history. They stored it in a way that requires other beings to care, to remember their own lives in order to access these lives. It's brilliant. It ensures that only someone who understands the value of memory can use it. But why? One of the scientists asked. Why make it so difficult? Maybe because they wanted to make sure the knowledge went to someone who would respect it, Daewon suggested. Someone who wouldn't just take information and forget where it came from. Someone who understands that every piece of data was someone's real experience. Valthern approached the chamber slowly. For the first time since Yuna met him, the Threnari seemed uncertain. My species thinks in calculations and probabilities. We value efficiency and logic. We have records, but we don't have stories. Not like this, not personal ones. That's why you couldn't access it, Yuna said gently. The drive wasn't locked. You just weren't speaking its language. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the drive with new understanding. This wasn't just ancient technology. It was a bridge between species, between times, between different ways of thinking, and only humans with their deep connection to memory and emotion could cross it. Commander Lim cleared his throat. Dr. Kang, I need to report this to the Galactic Council immediately. This changes everything. Wait, Valthern said. Everyone turned to look at him. Before you report, let me try something. He approached the chamber. For a long moment, he simply stood there, his tall frame perfectly still. Then he spoke. I do not have memories like yours. My species does not experience emotion the same way, but I remember the day I first saw a star go supernova. I was young. I had just begun my studies. I stood at the observatory and watched light that had traveled for thousands of years finally reach our world. I felt small, insignificant, but also part of something vast. I have never forgotten that moment. Does that count? The drive remained dark, silent. Valthern's shoulders slumped slightly. I see. Even when we try, we cannot speak this language. Maybe it's not about trying, Yuna said. Maybe it's about being. You felt something real that day. You remember it. That's what matters. The drive just needs time to understand you. Or perhaps, Valthern said quietly, some things are meant for some species and not others. There is no shame in that. But Yuna shook her head. I don't believe that. The Velkari left these drives all over their territory. They wanted someone to find them. Maybe many someones. Different species, different ways of thinking. They wanted their stories to survive. That means there has to be a way for everyone to access them, not just humans. Then how do we learn? Valthern asked. Yuna smiled. Maybe we teach each other. Humans understand memory and emotion. You understand logic and systems. Together, maybe we can figure out how this really works. Daewon stepped forward. I want to try. Can I try? Yuna nodded. Daewon approached the chamber and took a deep breath. My brother died in a colonial accident 8 years ago. I wasn't there. I was on another planet, doing work I thought was important. I got the message 3 days late because of communication delays. By the time I arrived home, he was already buried. I never got to say goodbye. His voice shook. I think about him every day. I wonder what he would have done with his life. What he would have said. I remember him, the drive responded. Not as strongly as before, but the pattern shifted. New images appeared. Different Velkari, different moments, and this time, Yuna saw something that made her throat tight. The images showed loss, grief. Velkari mourning their dead, holding each other through pain. They understood, Daewon whispered. They knew what it felt like. The images faded. The room remained silent, everyone processing what they had witnessed. Commander Lim finally spoke. This is bigger than one research station. The Council needs to know that humanity can access Velkari archives, but they also need to know what that means, what it requires. Some will see it as power, Valthern said. The ability to access knowledge others cannot. That will create fear, resentment. Then we need to be careful how we share this, Yuna said. We're not trying to have power over anyone. We're just trying to remember, to learn, to make sure the Velkari stories don't disappear. She looked at the drive glowing softly in its chamber. 50,000 years ago, the Velkari had filled it with their lives, their hopes, their memories, and now finally someone could hear them again. Thank you, Yuna whispered to it. Thank you for waiting. The drive pulsed once more, and Yuna knew somehow that it was grateful too. News spread through the galaxy faster than light travel. Within 3 days, every major civilization knew that humans could access Velkari archives. Within a week, Research Station Meridian 7 received over 200 requests from alien species wanting to learn about their own ancient histories. Una stood in Commander Lim's office, looking at the list of delegations waiting to visit. Representatives from dozens of worlds, scientists, historians, politicians. All of them wanted access to the drive. All of them wanted to know what the Velkari had recorded about their ancestors. The Galactic Council wants to take custody, Commander Lim said. He looked tired. Lines had appeared around his eyes that weren't there a week ago. They claim the drive is universal heritage, too important to remain under single-species control. But only humans can access it, Daewon pointed out. He sat in the corner monitoring data from the lab on his portable screen. Taking it away from us doesn't make sense. It makes political sense, Velthern said. The Threnari had remained on the station, observing every interaction with the drive. Many species are uncomfortable with humanity having exclusive access to such important knowledge. They fear what you might find, what you might keep secret. Una understood their concern. In a galaxy where thousands of species competed for resources and influence, information was power. The Velkari archives contained 50,000 years of recorded history. That included technological developments, political strategies, environmental disasters, and social movements. In the wrong hands, that knowledge could be dangerous. We won't keep secrets, Una said. Everything we learn from the drive we'll share openly. Will you? Velthern tilted his head. What if you discover something that benefits humanity but harms others? What if you learn about weapons technology, or weaknesses in other species' biology? Then we still share it, Commander Lim said firmly. Humanity didn't come this far by hiding what we know. We came this far by learning from our mistakes. A message appeared on his desk screen. The council delegation arrives tomorrow, he said. They want a demonstration. They want to see for themselves how the drive works. Una nodded slowly. She had spent the last 3 days conducting more tests with the drive. Each time she shared a personal memory, the drive responded. Each time it showed her fragments of Velkari life. She had seen their cities, their art, their families. The images were always emotional, always personal, never just facts or data, but she had also discovered something troubling. The deeper memories were harder to access. The drive seemed to have layers like an onion. The outer layers showed simple moments, daily life. The inner layers remained locked, requiring more powerful emotional connections to unlock. There's something else, Una said. I've been mapping the drive's structure. It's not random. The memories are organized in a specific pattern, from surface to depth, from simple to complex. The Velkari designed it this way on purpose. What's at the center? Daewon asked. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it requires the strongest possible emotional connection to access. Something beyond simple memories. Something more profound. Velthern considered this. Perhaps it's their most important knowledge. Their greatest discoveries. Or perhaps it's something else. Something they wanted to hide. Why would they hide knowledge in their own archive? Commander Lim asked. Maybe they weren't hiding it, Una said slowly. Maybe they were protecting it, making sure only someone worthy could access it. The next day, the council delegation arrived. 5 representatives from 5 different species, all powerful civilizations with ancient histories. They gathered in the laboratory, watching as Una prepared for another attempt to access the drive. The lead representative was a Kavran named Tholmer, whose people were among the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. His voice was deep and resonant. Show us what humans can do. Una approached the chamber. She had decided to share a different kind of memory this time, something that might unlock deeper layers of the archive. My name is Una Kang, she said to the drive. I'm going to tell you about the day humanity lost its memory. The delegates leaned forward. Even Velthern seemed surprised. March 3rd, 2287, Una continued. The solar wars had been going for 3 years. Earth was dying. We knew we had to leave to spread across the stars, but we also knew we needed to take our history with us, so we built Archive Ship Unity. We filled it with every book, every painting, every recording, every piece of music we could save. 10,000 years of human culture. Everything that made us who we were. Her voice grew softer. I was 15 years old. I watched the news with my parents. We saw Unity in orbit, preparing to jump to a safe system. We saw the attack. 3 missiles. The ship exploded. Everything inside was destroyed instantly. Every original Shakespeare manuscript, every recording of Bach, Every painting from every civilization Earth ever knew. Gone. Tears ran down Yuna's face. She didn't wipe them away. We kept digital copies of some things, fragments, echoes, but the originals were lost forever. And with them, we lost something essential. We lost the weight of our own past. We became a species without deep roots, without the ability to touch what our ancestors touched, to hear what they actually heard. We became ghosts haunting our own history. The drive responded more powerfully than ever before. Light filled the chamber. Colors swirled, and the images that appeared were different from before. Darker, sadder. The holographic display showed Valkyrie cities burning, their world dying. Valkyrie running, trying to save what they could. But there was too much. Too many people. Too much history. Too much life. And not enough time. The images showed them creating the memory drives, filling them with everything they could remember. Every story, every face, every moment worth preserving. But they knew it wasn't enough. Could never be enough. Then the images showed something that made everyone in the room go silent. The Valkyrie weren't dying from war or disease. They were choosing to die, standing together, holding hands, letting their world fade while their memories lived on in the drives. What are we seeing? Thalmor whispered. Their extinction, Yuna said quietly. It wasn't an accident. They chose this. The images continued. They showed why. The Valkyrie had documented hundreds of civilizations, thousands of years of galactic history, and they had seen a pattern. Every intelligent species made the same mistakes, fought the same wars, destroyed the same resources, lost the same things. Over and over, an endless cycle of forgetting and repeating. The Valkyrie had grown tired, depressed. They stopped believing that intelligence had value. If everyone made the same mistakes, what was the point? If memory couldn't prevent destruction, why remember at all? But before they died, they did one last thing. They created the memory drives and scattered them across their territory. A message to the future, a hope that someday someone would find them, someone who still believed that memory mattered, that the past could inform the future, that learning was possible. The images faded. The room remained silent. Finally, Velthorn spoke. They were waiting for us, for any of us, for someone who hadn't given up. They were waiting for someone who still carries their pain, Yuna said. She looked at the delegates. That's why only humans can access this so far. Because we know what it means to lose everything and keep going, to carry the weight of failure and still try. That's our strength. Not that we don't fail, but that we remember our failures and continue anyway. Thalmor stepped closer to the chamber. My species has existed for 40,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have survived catastrophes. But we do not speak of our failures. We focus only on our achievements. Perhaps that is why we cannot access this archive. We have forgotten how to mourn. Maybe, Yuna said, or maybe you just need to find your own way to connect. Memory isn't just about sadness. It's about truth. Being honest about what happened, good and bad. One of the other delegates, a female Silvori named Carthan, spoke up. What if we learn from you? What if humans teach us how to remember the way you do? That could take years, another delegate said. Then it takes years, Carthan replied. This archive has waited 50,000 years. What's a few more? Commander Lim cleared his throat. The question is, what do we do now? The Council wants control of the drive, but it responds to humans. We need a solution that works for everyone. Yuna had been thinking about this for days. I have a proposal. We keep the drive here, but we open the station to everyone. We create an academy, a place where humans can teach other species how to access the archives. Not just Valkyrie archives, but any emotional memory storage we find. Because if the Valkyrie used this technology, others might have too. An academy of memory, Velthorn said slowly. Teaching species to feel, to remember, to connect with the past. Not just teaching, Yuna corrected. Learning too. Every species has different ways of experiencing reality. Different emotions. Different memories. Maybe together we can unlock deeper layers than any of us could alone. The delegates looked at each other. Finally, Thalmor nodded. I will recommend this to the Council. But understand, Dr. Kang, many will resist. Many will see this as humanity claiming power. Then we prove them wrong, Yuna said. We share everything. We help everyone. We make this about learning, not controlling. After the delegates left, Una remained in the lab with Daiwan and Velthern. The drive glowed softly, its patterns moving in new configurations now, as if it was pleased. Do you really think other species can learn to access it? Daiwan asked. I have to believe that, Una said. Because if only humans can do this, we become gatekeepers. And that's not what the Velkari wanted. They wanted their stories to survive, to be heard by anyone, by everyone. Velthern approached the chamber slowly. I would like to try again, if you'll allow it. Of course, Una said. The Threnari stood before the drive for a long moment. Then he spoke. I told you before about seeing a supernova, but I did not tell you why it mattered. I was studying to become a calculator, a processor of data. My people expected me to serve in that role my entire life. But when I saw that dying star, I realized something. The universe was more than numbers. It was also beauty, wonder, things that couldn't be calculated. I changed my path that day, became an observer instead. My family was disappointed. I disappointed them. But I could not go back to seeing the universe as only data. It was more. It had to be more. The drive flickered, just slightly, but enough that everyone saw it. Velthern's voice shook. It heard me. Yes, Una said softly. It heard you. And in that moment, the possibility opened. The chance that different species, different minds, different ways of being could all find a way to connect with the past, to remember together, to learn from what came before. The Velkari's hope, dormant for 50 millennia, began to grow again. 3 months passed. Research Station Meridian 7 transformed from a quiet archaeological outpost into the busiest location in the sector. Ships arrived daily carrying students, scientists, and volunteers from across the galaxy. The council approved Una's proposal, and the Memory Academy opened its doors. Una walked through the new wing of the station, watching classes in progress. In one room, a human instructor named Jiwan An taught a group of young Threnari how to identify emotional connections in their own experiences. In another, a Cavern elder shared stories with human students, teaching them about patience and perspective. The academy was becoming what Una hoped it would be, a place where species learned from each other, but the drive's deepest layers remained locked. Una had accessed hundreds of memories over the past months. She had seen Velkari celebrations and tragedies, their art and science, their love and loss. Each memory required a corresponding human memory to unlock it. She had shared her childhood, her education, her friendships, her grief. She had given the drive pieces of herself until she felt hollow, and still the core remained sealed. Daiwan found her standing in front of the chamber late one night. You need to rest, he said. You've been pushing too hard. There's something in the center, Una said. Something important. I can feel it. Every time I get close, the drive shows me glimpses, warnings, images of something the Velkari wanted to preserve above everything else. Maybe it's not meant to be opened yet. Daiwan suggested. Maybe we're not ready, or maybe I'm not giving it the right memory. Una pressed her hand against the glass. Everything I've shared has been personal, specific moments in my own life. But what if it needs something bigger? Something that represents all of humanity, not just me. How do you give it a memory that belongs to an entire species? Una didn't answer. She was thinking about what she had seen in the drive's warnings, images of endings, conclusions, final moments, the Velkari's last memories before they chose extinction. I think I know what it wants, she said slowly. I think it wants to know about humanity's darkest moment. Not my personal darkness, our collective darkness. The moment we almost destroyed ourselves, Daiwan went pale. The solar wars. More specifically, the day we knew we had lost Earth. The day we understood that our homeworld was dying and we had killed it. Una, that's not just your memory. That's everyone's trauma. Every human alive carries that wound. I know. She turned to face him. That's why it might work. The Velkari put their own extinction at the center of their archive. Maybe they want to see if we understand what it means to lose everything, if we've learned from it, or if we're just repeating their mistakes. And if the drive shows us something terrible, something that proves they were right to give up, then we deal with it, Una said. But we won't know unless we try. She sent messages to Commander Lim and Velthern, asking them to come to the lab. When they arrived, she explained her theory. Both of them looked concerned. The solar wars are still painful for most humans, Commander Lim said. I lost my parents in the fighting. My home city was destroyed. Asking someone to relive that for an experiment seems cruel. I'm not asking anyone else, Una said quietly. I'll do it. I was there. I remember. You were a child, Velthern said. How much could you have understood? Enough, Una's voice was firm. I was 15 when Earth fell, old enough to know what was happening, young enough that it shaped everything I became. I watched my world die. I watched my species run. I watched us lose everything we built over 10,000 years because we couldn't stop fighting each other. That memory is burned into me. It's part of who I am. The room fell silent. Finally, Commander Lim nodded. If you're sure about this. I am. Una approached the chamber. She took several deep breaths, preparing herself. This would be different from previous attempts. More painful, more real. She wasn't just sharing a memory. She was opening an old wound. March 3rd, 2287, she began. Her voice shook. That was the day archive ship Unity was destroyed. But that wasn't the worst day. The worst day came later. July 19th, 2287. The day the Earth Defense Council made their announcement. She closed her eyes and the memory came flooding back. She was 15 years old, sitting in an evacuation shelter with thousands of other refugees. The screens showed the council members, their faces gray with exhaustion and defeat. I remember every word, Una said. The chairperson said, after careful analysis, we have concluded that Earth is no longer viable for human habitation. The environmental damage is irreversible. The ecosystem collapse cannot be stopped. We have 6 months, maybe less, before the remaining cities become uninhabitable. All remaining evacuation ships will depart by year's end. Anyone still on Earth after that will not survive. Tears ran down Una's face. I remember looking at my parents. My father was crying. My mother held his hand. She looked at me and said, remember this. Remember what happens when we forget to love our home. Promise me you'll never let humanity forget. The drive exploded with light, brighter than ever before. The patterns inside moved so fast they became a blur, and then the entire lab filled with images. But these weren't Velkhari memories. These were human memories. Una saw Earth as it used to be. Blue oceans, green forests, cities gleaming in sunlight. Then she saw it dying, oceans boiling, forests burning, cities crumbling, and she saw humans running, desperate, afraid, knowing they had done this to themselves, but she also saw humans helping each other, sharing resources, protecting the weak, refusing to leave anyone behind, fighting not for victory but for survival, for each other. The images shifted. Now they showed the Velkhari watching their own world die. But the images were different than before. This time, Una could see emotions she had missed. The Velkhari weren't just giving up. They were afraid, exhausted. They had fought so hard to document history, to preserve memory, to prevent others from making their mistakes. And they had failed. Every civilization they studied had destroyed itself eventually. The pattern seemed unbreakable. But then the images showed something new. The Velkhari creating the memory drives. And Una finally understood. They weren't just storing information. They were sending a message. A test, a challenge to the future. The drive projected words, not in Velkhari language, but somehow translated directly into concepts that everyone present could understand. To whoever finds this, we are the Velkhari. We are the record keepers. We documented 573 civilizations across 50,000 years. All of them fell. All of them repeated the same pattern. Grow, expand, consume, destroy, forget, die. We grew tired of watching this cycle. We lost hope that intelligence could overcome itself, so we chose to end. But before we did, we left this message, this test. If you can access our memories, it means you still value memory. You still believe the past matters. You haven't forgotten how to feel, how to grieve, how to learn from pain. But accessing surface memories is easy. Living beings naturally remember joy and sorrow. The deeper question is this: can you face your own failures?
Can you acknowledge your mistakes?
Can you carry the weight of your species' darkest moments and still choose to continue? That is what we could not do. We saw too much failure, too much loss. We let the weight of documentation crush our hope. If you have reached this layer, you have proven something we could not. That acknowledging failure doesn't mean accepting defeat. That memory of darkness can coexist with choice of light. At the center of this drive is our final gift, knowledge we withheld from ourselves because we feared it would make things worse. Technology. wisdom, secrets, things we learned but never shared because we no longer trusted, intelligence to use knowledge responsibly. But you have shown us that some species carry their failures forward instead of running from them, that some beings remember pain not to dwell in it but to avoid repeating it. The center will open for you. Use what you find wisely. Remember us. Remember yourself. Remember that memory is not a burden but a bridge. The words faded. The light dimmed, and at the center of the drive a new layer became visible, glowing softly, waiting. Everyone in the lab stood in stunned silence. Finally, Velthern spoke. His voice was almost reverent. They weren't testing if we could access their technology. They were testing if we deserved it. They were testing if we had learned, Una corrected. If we understood that intelligence means nothing without wisdom. That knowledge means nothing without responsibility. Commander Lim stepped forward. What's in the center? I don't know, Una said. But I think we're about to find out. She reached toward the chamber, but Velthern stopped her. Wait, this is too important for one person to decide. If the center contains what the Velkhari claim, it could change the galaxy. We should involve the council. Make this decision together. Una wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. How long will that take? A few days. Maybe a week? The council will want representatives from every major civilization present. Whatever is revealed should be revealed to everyone at once. Una nodded slowly. She looked at the drive, at the glowing center that had been hidden for 50,000 years, the Velkhari's final gift, their last hope. Okay, she said, we wait. We do this right, together. As they left the lab, Una looked back one more time. The drive pulsed softly as if acknowledging her decision, as if approving. Thank you, she whispered. For waiting, for hoping, for believing someone would find you. And deep inside the crystal ancient minds that were not quite alive but not quite dead anymore rested easier. Their message had been received. Their test had been passed. Now came the hard part, trusting the future to learn from the past. 1 week later, the laboratory was filled with representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. The space was barely large enough to hold them all. Threnari, Kavrin, Silvori, humans, dozens of other species, all gathered to witness what the Velkhari had hidden at the center of their memory drive. Una stood before the chamber, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. This moment would define not just her career, but potentially the future of galactic civilization. Whatever the Velkhari left behind would belong to everyone. That's what she had promised. No secrets. No single species controlling the knowledge. Commander Lim stood beside her. The council has agreed to your terms. Everything revealed today will be shared immediately with all member species. No delays, no classifications. Good, Una said. She looked at the drive, at the glowing center that pulsed softly. Waiting. Then let's see what they left us. She placed her hand on the interface panel. The drive responded immediately, as if it had been anticipating this moment. Light filled the chamber. Patterns swirled, and then the center opened. What emerged wasn't data or holographic images. It was something more fundamental. Pure information translated directly into understanding. Concepts that bypassed language and went straight into the minds of everyone present. Una gasped as knowledge flooded into her. Not just facts, but comprehension. Understanding. Wisdom accumulated over 50,000 years of observation. The Velkhari showed them 3 things. First, they revealed the pattern they had discovered. The cycle that every intelligent civilization seemed destined to repeat. It wasn't just about resource depletion or war. It was deeper, more fundamental. Intelligence created tools. Tools created power. Power created inequality. Inequality created conflict. Conflict created forgetting. And forgetting restarted the cycle. But the Velkhari also showed something else. The pattern wasn't inevitable. It could be broken. And the key to breaking it was exactly what had allowed access to this chamber. Memory. Honest, painful, complete memory. Civilizations that remembered their failures, that taught their children about mistakes, that kept the weight of the past present in their culture. Those civilizations had a chance. Not a guarantee, but a chance. The second revelation was technological. The Velkhari shared designs for sustainable energy systems, environmental restoration techniques, medical advances, and peaceful conflict resolution frameworks. Not weapons, not tools of domination, but tools of healing, of building, of sustaining life across centuries. The technology was elegant and practical. Any species present could adapt it to their own needs. There was no single correct way to use it. The Velkari had designed flexibility into everything, understanding that different species would need different solutions. But the third revelation was the most important, and the most challenging. The Velkari showed them other memory drives, hundreds of them, thousands, scattered across the galaxy on dead worlds and abandoned stations, each one containing different knowledge, different histories, different lessons, and each one accessible only through emotional connection, through memory, through the willingness to face pain and carry it forward. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. The real work was finding all the other drives, unlocking all the other knowledge, learning all the other lessons, and that work would take generations, centuries, maybe millennia, but it wouldn't be work that any single species could do alone. As the knowledge transfer completed, Una stumbled backward. Daewon caught her arm, steadying her. Around the room, representatives from various species looked similarly overwhelmed. Thalmer, the Cavern elder, spoke first. They have given us the map but not the journey. The tools but not the destination. Why? Una found her voice. Because the journey is the point. They showed us that the pattern breaks when species work together, when they share memory instead of hoarding knowledge, when they help each other instead of competing. The other drives aren't just repositories of information. They're opportunities to practice cooperation. Velthern approached the chamber slowly. Some of these drives will be in dangerous locations, hostile environments, contested territories. Retrieving them will require trust between species that have been enemies for centuries. Yes, Una said. That's exactly the point. We can't just read about cooperation. We have to live it. One of the Silvori representatives, Carthan, spoke up. And the knowledge itself. Some of it could be dangerous. What if one of these drives contains weapons technology, ways to harm instead of heal? Then we decide together what to do with it, Commander Lim said. The Velkari trusted us with this information. They believed that species capable of accessing their drives through memory and emotion would also be wise, enough to handle difficult knowledge responsibly. That's a dangerous assumption, another representative said. Maybe, Una agreed, but it's also the only way forward. We either trust each other, work together, and learn from the past, or we repeat the cycle. Those are our choices. The room fell into discussion. Some representatives were excited. Others were cautious. A few were openly skeptical. But slowly a consensus emerged. The council would form an expedition program. Mixed species teams would search for other Velkari drives. Humans would serve as primary interface operators, but every team would include representatives from multiple civilizations. The knowledge gained would be shared immediately and completely. It would be called the Memory Project. And it would become the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. As the meeting concluded and representatives began to leave, Velthern remained behind. He approached Una slowly. I doubted you, he said. When you first activated this drive, I thought it was accident, coincidence. I could not believe that human emotion was more valuable than Threnari logic. It's not more valuable, Una said gently. It's different, complementary. You've shown me that over these months. Your logic helps us understand the systems. Our emotion helps us access them. Together, we're more than either of us alone. I would like to join one of the expedition teams, Velthern said. If you'll have me, I want to learn more about this way of thinking. This way of being. My species has much to learn from yours, and we have much to learn from yours, Una replied. That's what makes this work. Over the next months, the first expedition teams formed and deployed. Una led one team herself, traveling to a distant system where sensors had detected another Velkari signature. The team included humans, Threnari, Cavern, and Silvori. Different biologies, different psychologies, different cultures, but united in purpose. When they found the second drive, Una wasn't surprised that it required a different approach. This one responded not just to individual memory, but to shared experience, to moments when different species had worked together, helped each other, trusted each other. It took weeks of the team building those experiences, learning each other's stories, sharing meals and conversations, slowly building the emotional connections the drive needed to recognize. And when it finally opened, Yuna understood something profound. The Velkari hadn't just left knowledge. They had left a curriculum, a way of teaching species to cooperate. Each drive required deeper levels of trust, more profound cooperation, greater shared understanding. By the time species worked together long enough to access all the drives, they would have built the relationships necessary to use the knowledge wisely. It was brilliant, and it was exactly what the galaxy needed. Years passed. The memory project expanded. More drives were found. More knowledge was shared. More connections were built between species that had never worked together before. Yuna eventually returned to Research Station Meridian 7, now formally renamed the Velkari Memorial Institute. The Memory Academy had grown massive. Students from hundreds of worlds studied there, learning not just how to access ancient memory drives, but how to build emotional connections across species barriers. One evening, Yuna stood in the original laboratory where everything had started. The first drive still glowed in its chamber, now a permanent installation, a reminder of where the journey began. A young student approached. His name was Han Sol Kim, a human barely 20 years old. "Dr. Kang, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask you something." "Of course. I'm about to do my first memory walk, access a drive for the first time, and I'm scared. What if my memory isn't good enough? What if I can't make the connection?" Yuna smiled. She had heard this question dozens of times now. "What memory were you planning to share?" "It's small, maybe too small. When I was 7, my father taught me how to fold paper cranes. It was just one afternoon. Nothing important, but I remember how patient he was, how he showed me the same fold over and over until I got it right, how he told me that every crane carries a wish, that creating something beautiful is never wasted effort." "That's perfect," Yuna said. "Don't you see? That memory contains everything the Velkari valued: patience, teaching, hope, the belief that small moments matter, that creating is better than destroying, that beauty has purpose." Hansol looked uncertain. "You really think it will work?" "I know it will. Because the Velkari weren't looking for grand moments or dramatic memories. They were looking for truth, for real human experience. Your memory of folding cranes with your father is as true as any memory can be." She watched as Hansol approached a newly discovered drive, recently brought to the Institute. He placed his hand on the interface, spoke his memory, and the drive responded, opening like a flower to sunlight. Yuna felt tears on her face. Even after all this time, it still moved her. The moment when connection happened, when past and present touched, when memory became a bridge instead of a burden. Day 1 found her there later, watching students work with various drives. "You look thoughtful," he said. "I'm thinking about the Velkari," Yuna replied. About how close they came to being right. How easy it would have been for them to be right. If no one had found their drives, or if we hadn't been able to access them, their belief that intelligence was a curse would have been confirmed. "But we did find them," Daewon said. "And we could access them, because humanity never forgot how to feel, how to remember, how to carry pain forward and transform it into something useful. Not just humanity," Yuna corrected. "All of us. Every species here has learned to do this. We taught each other. That's what makes it work." She looked around the institute, students from dozens of species working together, sharing memories, accessing ancient knowledge, building relationships that would shape the future of the galaxy. "The Velkari thought they were leaving a gift," Yuna said. "But really, they left us homework. The hardest assignment any species could face: learn to work together, learn from the past, learn to remember without drowning in regret, learn to hope despite knowing how often hope fails." "And are we passing?" Daewon asked. Yuna smiled. "Ask me in a few thousand years. But so far, I think we're doing okay." That night, Yuna returned to her quarters and pulled out her grandmother's photo. The old woman smiled at her from across the years, across the distance of death and memory. "We found them, grandmother," Yuna whispered. "The ones who remembered, the ones who understood. And we're learning from them. We're carrying their stories forward, just like you taught me to carry ours." She thought about August 15th, 2089, the date she had first spoken to the Velkari drive, the date her grandmother had told her about Earth. That moment had changed everything. One memory, one story, one connection across time, And now, across the galaxy, thousands of similar moments were happening every day. Humans and aliens sharing their lives with each other and with the ancient dead, building bridges between past and present, between different ways of being, between hope and despair. The Velkari had doubted that intelligence could overcome its own patterns. They had lost faith in the future, but they had been wrong. Not because humans were special, but because no species was alone. Together, learning from each other, remembering for each other, carrying each other's stories, intelligence could evolve beyond its limitations. The memory drive had been declared irretrievable, but she had whispered a date and it remembered, and that simple act of remembering had saved more than just ancient knowledge. It had saved the possibility of hope itself. Una placed her grandmother's photo on her desk and began writing her daily report. There were new drives to find, new species to teach, new memories to share. The work would never end. The pattern would always threaten to repeat. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the Velkari's memory was alive again. Their lessons were being learned. Their hope was being carried forward. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, on dead worlds and forgotten stations, other memory drives waited patiently, hoping that someone someday would whisper their own date, their own story, their own truth. And remember that memory is not a burden. It's a bridge between stars,